In this theory, people say it's absurd how the sun could be so huge and then shrink down to Earth, Venus, Mercury sized, or Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, or Neptune sized objects. Well, it's losing mass to solar flares, solar wind, and radiation, very little bit to radiation. And it's losing mass so rapidly that it is cooling and dying. Over time, this mass loss will be much more apparent as the star dims and ceases shining from its own light, becoming what's called a brown dwarf. And this brown dwarf will continue to condense and lose mass to the radiation of newer, hotter host stars, and eventually expose its little core that's been forming over many billions of years, and that's what we call a planet. That's what's happening to these objects. This object is going to become this object, which becomes these objects, which become these objects. And if you'll notice, that means that this solar system that we live in, it's an adopted family. All these objects came from somewhere else in the galaxy. Now, how is that possible? Well, the sun travels through the galaxy and it adopts objects which are in its vicinity. It's just moving along the galaxy, and whatever it's in its path, it adopts. So it just adopted these objects. And these objects are all different ages and have been inside the galaxy wandering about for many billions of millions of years, long before the sun even existed. Now, for those that say, oh, it's absurd that the sun should lose that much mass to become these things, that's not really all that absurd. We have much more absurd ideas that we consider to be fact. Check it out. This is a coffee bean. This is a grain of rice. This is a sesame seed. This is a grain of salt. That little dot right above my pointer is a human egg. That's what we all were at one point in time. That tiny, 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 tiny little thing. Now, isn't that absurd? I think it is. But that's how nature works. It starts off really, really, really small, and it gets big when it comes to biological things like that. Like a sequoia seed. Sequoia seeds are very, very small as well. They're about as big as a sesame seed or a grain of rice. Yet they grow into very, very large trees over many thousands of years. The key to all of it is time. Deep, deep time. That is the same key to this object becoming these objects, becoming these objects, becoming these objects. They're all vastly different in age. This one is the youngest. These are the middle-aged ones. These are older than those. And these are very, very old, many billions of years old. The formation of the Earth is the evolution of these things. This is a brand new Earth, very young, hot, in all its glory. These are middle-aged Earths. These are late-age Earths. And these are Earths. And Venus, Mercury, those are dead Earths. Those wouldn't be hospitable to life or Mars because they no longer contain magnetic fields and they're completely almost solidified in their interior. Well, that about sums it up. Just keep that in mind when you think of something being absurd. Just make sure you pay attention to what we already consider fact, because usually it's not really all that absurd if you really consider it. Just, use your brain a little bit.